What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Collection Commentary. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this Andre Thorburn L36M custom made. It is freaking ridiculous. So let's just jump right into it. First things first, let's get a size comparison for you guys. This is the L36M model. It's fairly big. And we're going to line this right up next to the PM2. Go ahead and slide the PM2 back here a little bit. So you can see this knife is an absolute monster. The PM2 is already a big knife to begin with. This really big blade extends well beyond the blade of the PM2. You can see in terms of handle size, they're virtually identical, even though the Thorburn is much thicker. So that's definitely something to consider. The PM2 is fairly thin for its size. The Thorburn, being a liner lock, is definitely a good chunk thicker. Let's go ahead and take a look at exactly how much thicker. So it can be a little bit difficult to see there. The PM2 fills out most of the actual size in terms of thickness as the Thorburn, but the Thorburn's also contoured, so it can be a little bit difficult to see here side by side. But the Thorburn gets fat around the middle as opposed to the PM2, which is completely flat. So you can see it's definitely a monster of a knife for sure. It really fills the hand. It's just massive. Absolutely massive. So I love that. Let's go ahead and jump right into it, guys, with the features and flaws on this knife. So the first thing that I want to talk about, while I've still got it slightly polished, is the beauty. You know, it's going to be really hard to be objective on this one, guys. It's a handmade knife from South Africa, made by Andre Thorburn. Most of you probably already know that. But it's just so well made and so well crafted that we really just need to take a moment to go over the aesthetics of the knife. What we have here are hand milled zirconium bolsters, which you can see have then been anodized with multiple colors of purple. You've got kind of like a purplish, orangish, pinkish magenta here, and then a more true purple up towards the top. And then you can also see there is kind of an orange peel done around that has anodization as well. It's very light. It's very faint. It's kind of like a purplish green. It's hard to see. I don't know if I'll get it on camera. And then, of course, you have these other sections that are polished. My fingerprints are on there a little bit, but fairly polished. And, I mean, come on. This is all done by hand. It's magnificent. And then if we check out the reverse side, it's actually the same pattern mirrored. Now, if you have time to look at them back to back, there are some differences, but that's to be expected with such an intricate hand-done design. But they're fairly mirrored, which is gorgeous. They're just beautiful. It's really amazing. Then you have this awesome carbon fiber. It's got a nice glossy sheen to it. I would have preferred a matte finish. That's just me personally, so it had a little bit more tactility to it, but carbon fiber is still gorgeous. Completely glossed over. You have this 3D milled clip, which I prefer to the typical Thorburn clips pre-end of 2016 that were spring clips. It has the ceramic ball in it. I just really appreciate the jump upward in terms of quality there compared to the old clips. I think the old clips are a little bit more usable and a little bit actually better for functionality. But when the rest of the knife is this gorgeous, having something that, you know, looks like it got ripped off a Benchmade was just kind of like, really? So I really appreciate this. And then as we continue through, you can see we have titanium liners done in this beautiful sort of Bahama ocean blue. Beautiful. And then on the back side here, we have jimping up here, followed by this milled wave pattern. File worked wave pattern, I suppose is a better way to put it. And then he's done purple among the teal. Look at that. Wow. got this kind of reflectiveness to it. It's I've carried this a fair bit now, so there's some gunk in there, which kind of dirties up the sheen. But man, looks so good. You can see when I rotate it back and forth, it's kind of jeweled almost. So it kind of disappears and then comes back. Unbelievable. What a knife. And then, of course, you have this G10 backspacer. And then the standard Andre Thorburn G10 red trim in between the scales and the frame. So as you can see as well, we have these holes milled into the flipper tab. And overall, this thing is just beautiful. Take a look at this recurve blade, this giant recurve. I guess it's a drop point. Bit of a swedge going on here. I love right here, the swedge is curved. So it really just follows the flow of the overall blade. Amazing. And you've got this hand rub satin finish. Beautiful. And then mirrored flats. Of course, you have the IKBS logo. Beautiful. The Andre Thorburn logo. So thanks for indulging me there, guys. I really just wanted an opportunity to show you how incredibly aesthetically beautiful this thing is. It's so well crafted. You can feel the hours and the time and the sweat when you hold the knife and when you really get to take a look at it and dig deep and fawn over it for a while. It's just absolutely fantastic. The next thing that really separates this knife apart is the action on it. Just the D10 on it is very stiff, and the Thorburn thwack, for those of you who haven't heard that term before, that's what these things are known for. It's a really hard thing to get to come across on camera. If you guys watch my reveal video where I unboxed this knife for the first time, I just started cracking up laughing the first time I deployed it, because you can't hear the reverb in the microphone the way you can in real life. There's this, it's not one solid sound. Like the sound that it makes continues on for multiple milliseconds, and you kind of hear the sound waves fade away. I'm going to hold it right up to my microphone and try to do my best to give you guys some sense of what I'm talking about. But just know that you have to hold one of these to really understand. So we'll see how much of that came through, but oh God, it's just ridiculous. This thing whacks into place like nobody's business. It's just got the best deployment I've ever experienced on any knife. You can light switch it by holding, just by fat fingering the top and hold it vertical, and you're gonna get deployment. You can barely break the detent with your thumb. Vertical, you're gonna get deployment. You can push button, deployment. So you guys can see here, even on the neon that I have lent out to me right now, if you hold it vertical, you just barely break the detent, it's not gonna make it every time without hitting it hard enough. You cannot fail deployment on this knife. You cannot. And that's really special to me, and I think that's really special to any seasoned knife collector. You guys know there's always that one way of deployment that works better than another, and there's always that one weird way that you can open the knife to where you don't get deployment if you're holding it vertically. Not true here. The D10 is so snappy and so awesome that you cannot fail deployment. Oh, there I went, just failing deployment right there. But I mean, it's really near impossible to do. It's so good. And then in terms of this knife dropping closed, it does so completely under its own weight. It's really amazing. You can call it glass, you can call it smooth, you can call it whatever you want, but it's really special. Feels so good. This is probably my favorite knife in my collection right now to fondle. It's just got an action that I really haven't come close to experiencing on any other knife. You know, with this hand-done zirconium work and the crazy construction and everything else like this being handmade and all of that, the fact that I only paid $885 for this knife is absurd. Absolutely absurd. This knife here, this carbon fiber field grade Bodega, this thing is more expensive than the Thorburn out of the box, and this is a quarter of the knife that this is. A quarter. I'm telling you guys, these things should have a much higher price point, and if you ever get a chance to buy one, everybody tells you you should do so. And I'm here to add to that list and tell you this is the one. This is the one to pull the trigger on if you're going to really step up into the super high-end knife game. This is like, God, guys, I just can't even, I can't stress enough how amazing it is. It's so good. All right, so let's just keep talking about objective stuff, right? There is a little bit of lock stick that's grown in. It is a titanium liner making direct contact with the blade. Only maybe 10% of the time do I feel it. There was none to begin with when I got the knife. I flipped it an absolute frick ton, and I only feel it maybe 10-15% of the time. Most of the time it's not there, and it's very, very mild when it happens. So that's the only like pinpoint flaw that I've really found in the knife. And again, I've had to take it apart a few times for reasons I'll get to in a moment. And so it's really hard to say what's causing the lock stick. But again, it's very rare. It's barely there. And, you know, it's not something you need to worry about, I don't think. And there's probably other knives of his that don't have it at all. Just the blade is pretty sweet. You know, the reef curve makes it a little bit more difficult to sharpen for the average person. Not going to be an issue for me, but it is something to consider. And in general, this thing is massive. It's going to be great for any cutting task you have. I would be petrified of damaging this beautiful hand rub satin finish. Absolutely stellar. But, you know, I do use the knife. I'm just going to be bummed if one day, you know, I slice through a box and I get a giant scratch right up through the middle. That'll suck. But I am going to continue to use the knife. But it's really pretty, and obviously it's going to completely destroy any EDC task that you have for it. That's a no-brainer. Moving on, the knife is a bit chunky. Like I said earlier, it's pretty thick. It's got these contoured handles. It's a pretty big knife. But, you know, what do you want? It's... You know what you're getting into with this thing. And so when you hold it, it is fairly chunky, and it might even be a little bit too big for me. You can see my index finger doesn't get very far wrapping around the knife, but I like the bigger knives, so it's okay for me. But that's definitely something you might want to consider. This one's really big in every dimension, so you might want to go for one of his smaller models if that's the kind of thing that you look for in your EDC. And then the last thing I'll say about the features and flaws is that the knife is basically perfect. I try to be objective, guys. I try to tell you, you know, the things that I find with the knife that are wrong, and I feel like I've done a decent job of doing that in this video. But it really boils down to, at the price you pay for this knife and what you're getting, it's freaking perfect. Just buy one. Like, it's got steel IKBS. It's still got the most amazing action ever. There's no beating around the bush here. This thing is fucking stellar. You know, the centering, dead on. The action, 100% dead on. The construction, dead on. The artwork and the file work and the mill work, dead on. There's just no two buts about it. This is basically a perfect knife. Perfect is a funny term because it's subjective, even though by definition it's not subjective. But I think you guys kind of get where I'm headed, which is that anyone can find a flaw with anything, but for all intents and purposes, especially at only $885, this knife is basically perfect. Moving on to the story time. For those of you who either saw my unboxing video or who follow me on social media, Reddit, Instagram, you'll know that the knife actually was flawed out of the box. So the knife was a little bit off center, and then upon using the knife even more and flipping it even more, that continued to become an issue to the point where the blade was making contact with the liner right here. You can see the tolerances on this knife are extraordinary. But right here where it's super close, the blade was making contact there. And then after further use, the flipper tab on deployment was actually making contact with the inside of the liner as well. And so you can imagine somebody like me who just purchased this knife brand new from a dealer. I was panicking, basically. I had never spent this much in pure cash on a knife. I'd never bought like a handmade knife from a dealer, just like, bam, full on, send it straight to me. And so I panicked a little bit. I was a little concerned because I basically couldn't use the knife. It felt like it was falling apart on me as soon as I got it. And so, I was disassembling the knife and I was trying to figure out what was wrong, and I would put it back together and the issue didn't get fixed. And I was talking to a bunch of people on Reddit about it. And in my unboxing video actually was seen by Andre. I had emailed the dealer that I purchased the knife from, who I never actually heard back from. I might have had the wrong email address or something like that. But I was trying to figure out how to contact Andre when I didn't hear back from the dealer. And then I woke up one morning and I had an email in my inbox from Andre himself. So not only did he see my video, not only did he see that there was a slight flaw, he scrolled down to the description box, got my email address because I put it there, and emailed me directly to offer to completely repair or replace the knife free of charge. Obviously, Andre's in South Africa. He was saying that he was coming to Blade 2017 in Atlanta in June, and that I'd be able to send the knife to him at his hotel address, and he would either repair or replace the knife. He said he was going to bring another one with purple in it, to Blade for me, which was really neat because I mentioned in the video the reason that this, among other Thorburns, was the reason I pulled the trigger on is because it had purple anodization in the liners and on the zirconium. And he does a lot of blue and other colors, but it's hard to find purple, and obviously purple is my jam. And so for him to just offer that right off the bat and email me direct was unbelievable. Andre, if you're watching, I completely appreciate that. That was amazing. Talk about customer service, man. That really went above and beyond to reach out to me directly, and just finding me like that was absolutely amazing. So I'm extremely appreciative of that, and he just basically offered to take care of it. I'd kind of written the knife off. I put it aside. I was like, shoot, man, I'm gonna have to wait till June. Like, I don't want to wait till June. It's only April now, and it was only March when I got the knife. And so I talked to some more people. I got a little bit antsy, and I disassembled the knife for like a fourth time. I took everything out. I took the bearing balls out. I completely took both screws out of the pivot and the pivot cylinder and everything. I flipped the pivot cylinder around. I was just trying everything. I was like, I'm going to reseat the whole knife and just like see if that fixes it. So I put it back together, and all the centering issues were taken care of. And then I had good deployment. I got my Thorburn thwack back, and everything seemed really great. And then the only thing that was left that was wrong was that I would flip it, and over time I noticed the knife would get off center again. So what I finally did was I threw some Loctite in the pivot. I cranked it down, and now I've been flipping and using the knife for about another week since then, and it's been completely flawless. So I completely fixed the knife with a little bit of Loctite. Turns out big problems are solved by small solutions, and it was just that the pivot was coming loose over time. So the knife was getting more and more loose and more off center, and the pressure from the lock bar was pushing it further into the liner, and so that was just a little bit of a negative experience to begin with, but it was completely solved, and now the knife is basically flawless, and it's amazing. I just absolutely love having it, and I love playing with it, sorry. And the last thing I really have to say about it is that it's kind of starting to ruin other knives for me. I guess the most expensive knife technically to date that I've had is this field grade Bodega, which was right up near just under $1,000. Like I said, I paid $885 for this thing. And I've watched other people's videos. I've watched walking reviews and everybody kind of talk about their Thorburns and how they've already been to knife shows and talked to other collectors, and how like this really just blows anything even at higher price points out of the water. And so I'm almost like worried. I'm like afraid to buy something else super expensive, because like now I'm just worried I'm going to be disappointed. Like I said, the Bodega is more expensive, and this is 4 times the knife or the amount of awesomeness of knifedom than the Bodega. And so I'm like nervous that I'll start buying other full customs and spending more, $1,500, $2,000, and all of a sudden, I'm gonna realize that Thorburns are the only thing that do it for me, because it's so amazing. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the knife, guys. It's almost too good. I think that if I decide not to keep it, it's gonna be because I traded out for another Thorburn. I think now at this point I just want to try like all of his knives. Maybe do something with a bolster made by somebody else, or check something else out that's maybe a little bit smaller. And yeah, gosh, that's all I have to say about it. It's virtually a perfect knife. So if you have an opportunity to get your hands on a Thorburn, I absolutely recommend that you do. Andre is clearly a stellar stand-up dude, reaching out directly to me to help solve the problem. The knife is almost indescribable. It's just so great, and so I really appreciate it, guys. Follow me on Instagram at TovarishWorks to see amazing pictures of this knife and many others. If you want to see videos of other knives and see how they compare to the Thorburn, please remember to subscribe. If you like this video, hit that like button. It really helps to know what you guys appreciate versus what you don't, and I'll see you guys next time.